Hey everyone, welcome to this special edition of Paris on Politics we're calling CPS 101. As you know, over the last few weeks, turmoil has been brewing at Chicago Public Schools. And it all came to the surface in a fiery press conference Monday morning on the South Side. That's when the mayor doubled down on his plan to nominate brand new school board members months before a hybrid elected appointed board comes in. And now this crisis is making national headlines. An editorial in the Wall Street Journal called it a school board coup. So before we delve further into this, let's give you an introductory level course on Chicago Public Schools. So Chicago has the fourth largest public school district in the country. As of 2023, 323,000 students were enrolled, the majority coming from communities of color. 47% identify as Hispanic, 35% as Black, 11% as white, and 4.5% as Asian American. Now, there are 634 total schools. A handful of those are magnets and selective enrollments where students have to test to get in. Those are some of the highest performing schools in the state. And CPS reported an overall 84% graduation rate for the class of 2023. According to the Illinois Assessment of Readiness, though, only 31% of 3rd through 8th graders read at grade level, and only 19% met grade level math standards. And even if Chicago residents don't have children in CPS, they still have a stake. 55% of every property tax bill goes toward the school system for a total levy near $4 billion. Together with state money and federal grants, CPS's total budget is near $10 billion, but it faces a $500 million budget gap that could grow as the Chicago Teachers Union bargains for raises in a new labor contract and federal COVID relief money runs out. And now to the structure of CPS. It's run by a CEO. The position is currently held by Pedro Martinez. Above Martinez is the current 7-member school board, although all those members resigned last week. So you ask, why is there all of a sudden an election? That's because Governor Pritzker signed legislation endorsed by the CTU to move to a 21-member fully elected school board. But that doesn't happen until 2027. In 2025, the legislation calls for a 21-member hybrid board, 10 elected members and 11 appointed by the mayor, giving him ultimate control for at least the next 2 years. And we'll have more on the candidates for the elected positions in a few minutes. But for now, let's explore that topic of ultimate control and how it came front and center Monday morning at the mayor's press conference. A defiant Mayor Johnson plowed ahead announcing his replacements for the 7 school board members that resigned on Friday. But the announcement went off the rails before it even began. As the mayor began to introduce the new members at a Southside church, a handful of protesters had other ideas.
Not legit. Not legit.
But the mayor, who referenced how he fought to achieve an elected school board, repeated over and over that the authority to appoint new members right now rested with him and him only.
The power doesn't have to be flexed. The power just is. Because I have it.
The mayor admonished reporter questions about whether he was doing the bidding of the powerful Chicago Teachers Union and likened critics who have called his moves fiscally irresponsible to supporters of the Confederacy.
The so-called fiscally responsible stewards are making the same argument when our people wanted to be liberated and emancipated in this country. The argument was, you can't free black people because it would be too expensive.
The mayor revealed the new members just days after his previous hand-picked 7-member board all resigned, but he only had 6 names for 7 positions. They are Olga Bautista, Michaela Blaze, Mary Gardner, the Reverend Mitchell Ikenna Johnson, Deborah Pope, and Frank Niles Thomas.
We must remain focused on the goal, ensuring that every child in Chicago has access to safe and well-funded education.
The crisis at CPS comes after what sources describe as a relentless pressure campaign from the mayor's office to fire CEO Pedro Martinez, after Martinez refused a high-interest short-term loan to plug a budget gap and pay for a new CTU contract. A letter signed by 41 of 50 alder people over the weekend expressed concern at the CPS upheaval and urged the mayor to slow down and include city council in the process.
We're headed towards bankruptcy, and these people don't care. I don't think the mayor cares. All he wants to do is reward his friends, which is CTU.
The city council can have as many hearings as they want. There's only one person who has the authority by state law to make appointments.
Who is that?
And that's the mayor of Chicago, and that's me.
Those city council members are now calling a special city council meeting on Wednesday to discuss the CPS crisis. And Democratic State Representative Ann Williams has talked about Springfield intervening in some way as well. What will it take to turn around Chicago Public Schools, both its finances and student performance? What are the needs facing the district, and how will an elected school board change it? For some insights, we're joined by Dr. Janice Jackson, CEO of CPS from 2017 to 2021. Dr. Jackson, thanks for being here with us. This political turmoil that we're experiencing right now, how does this impact the CEO, managers, principals, teachers, and students when you have this kind of chaos at the top?
Yeah, I mean, this fall has been more chaotic than I've ever seen in our school system. And I think that, you know, someone who's been in the district in every single role that you just outlined, it makes it more difficult when you're already, you know, focused on what are the needs of our students. And for me, I'm really interested in us thinking about not just the tumult that's going on right now, but how do we make that the new hybrid board much more of a functional board and a productive board, and move away from a lot of the vitriol and a lot of the chaos that we've been seeing over the past few weeks.
Although, is that likely going to happen when we've turned at least half of this board for now into an elected board? Does that mean more politicians and more politicking on the board? Are you worried about that?
I mean, I'm worried about a few things. First of all, I'm worried about the size of the board. I think that that's something that needs to be taken into consideration. I'm also worried that many of our parents are unaware of what's happening. Because of the recent turmoil, I think more people are paying attention. So having an opportunity to educate our parents is important to me. I saw a poll that said about 25% of Black and Latino families didn't know that we were moving towards an elected school board. And to me, that's problematic because this is a more democratic process, and I want parents more engaged. So what I'm hoping to get out of today is making sure that parents feel informed and empowered, because there are some opportunities to really take control. But if people don't get registered to vote, if they don't come out and vote, if they don't do the research to think about the candidates that they want to support, I am afraid that there won't be the appropriate amount of checks and balances that a system needs.
And what do you think parents should be researching or thinking about when they go into the booth and choose between, in some cases, two candidates, in some cases more?
Well, I think they need to make sure the candidates' views align with their values and that candidates can be independent. At the end of the day, this is not an opportunity to pick sides. I think whether we're looking at local politics or national politics, there's just too much fighting. And what I can tell you as a person who ran a school and ran a school district, nothing infuriates parents more than this kind of drama going back and forth. Nobody wants to hear it. Nobody wants to see it. What they want, what they expect and deserve is leadership. They want to know that their children are going to be educated, that their children are going to get the best opportunities possible, and they also want to know how that's going to happen. And if there will be trade-offs in order to make that happen, they also have the right to be made aware of that. And I don't think that's happening right now. I think we're talking a lot about the North Star and, you know, this kind of utopia, but we're not talking about the pathway to get there, and we're leaving parents in the dark.
You had to deal with the Chicago Teachers Union, which now is very powerful politically, but they walked out on strike when you were dealing with labor negotiations. What is that task like? How difficult is it to deal with this labor organization that is politically minded, but also very, let's say, hell-bent on getting the things that they want?
Well, I will tell you, and I've said this over and over again, there is a role for the union in public school system in this country, period, full stop. However, I think when we move beyond those bread and butter issues and the things that really get us to having a high quality education and operating effectively for our district, and we start bringing in all these political things and all these different maneuvers that distract us, in my opinion, from what's more important, which is how are our students doing. When I think about the elected school board that we will have in a couple of months, I'm worried about who's paying attention to student performance, who's paying attention to how resources are being distributed. I feel like there's a tension right now where people are being, people don't feel comfortable speaking up, or they feel like if they speak up that they're somehow going against people that they love and respect.
Well,
and that's
the current
not true.
union, the board that just stepped down,
Yeah.
I know that they, for a fact, that they were concerned with those issues that you mentioned, but they're not speaking out right now.
Well, I think, I can't speak for them. I haven't talked to them just like media hasn't. But I think that they had a fiduciary responsibility and felt like they couldn't carry that out and made a decision. I think we probably will hear from them when it's probably more appropriate. But I think the people on that board are probably concerned with trying to bring about as much stability as possible. I can't speak for them, but that's my, sneaking suspicion.
The viewer in the morning really needs to have a good feeling for what it's going to be like for the rest of the day.
I've got 3 kids myself, so I set out their clothes Monday through Friday, which you can do too based on our 7-day forecast. The last thing that you want to have to think about is, what is my kid going to be wearing to school? What do I need in the morning?
Having grown up here, having spent about 30 years in this market predicting the weather, you not only get really familiar with the weather, but with the needs of your audience. And that's what it means to be the Weather Authority.
Welcome back to our Paris on Politics special, CPS 101. So we've covered the appointed part of the 2025 school board. Let's take a look at the process for electing the other 10 members. After some intense negotiating, lawmakers produced a school district map consisting of 10 districts. Here they are. Our friends at Chalkbeat Chicago have a full breakdown of the dozens of candidates and their backgrounds, and we've linked to that on our website, fox32chicago.com. And with just weeks to go until the election and early voting already underway, parents and families have an important choice to make. Our Nate Rogers has more.
School board candidates include educators, lawyers, activists, CEOs, also mothers of children with special needs. And do not forget the names of those candidates who you can write in. Now, here's what's key. Some folks are running independent. Others have had thousands of dollars dumped into their bank accounts by the Chicago Teachers Union and charter school advocates. It's a historic election. How will you decide? Do you even know some of the school board members by name?
I have to say I do not.
It's the first time in Chicago history residents are electing school board members through door knocking, phone banks, texts, and email blasts. Candidates are working to keep their name top of mind.
I'm going to vote for the candidate in my district only because I know him since he was a teenager from church. And he's my neighbor across the street. School board members have a lot of power, including hiring and firing of the district's CEO and balancing the $9 billion budget, also the $500 million deficit.
It is going to take action in Springfield for CPS to get the funding that we deserve for our kids.
Public forums have helped some voters dig deeper. Here in Woodlawn, candidates' priorities include equity, low academic performance, more support for diverse learners, and bilingual students.
The only thing that kept me at Julian was being on the marching band. And what I know about that is these students are not getting music and arts and vocational skills like we used to.
We're spending $30,000 per student, and the majority of our students cannot read and write at or above grade level.
With hundreds of thousands of dollars invested by CTU affiliates and charter school interests, could it sway potential members' votes?
I am the only independent candidate who has not taken money from a major special interest group that is on the 6th district ballot.
Just 2 blocks from Mayor Johnson's home, Frederick Douglass High School. Dozens of classrooms, an auditorium, and 3 computer labs. But listen in, only 27 students enrolled. The PTSA president calling it years of disinvestment.
A lot of our schools in Austin are empty. Even the elementary school, they have low enrollment. We need to bring our kids back to the community, sir.
30-plus candidates vying for 10 seats in 10 districts. Mayor Johnson appointing 11 additional members. At another forum in Roscoe Village, more top priorities shared.
Number 1 is bringing back the buses. If children are not in school, nothing else matters.
If we don't find ways to use our schools to not only lift the students, but also the parents, the whole face of our neighborhoods will be changing.
In 2027, the school board will transition to fully elected members supporting more than 320,000 CPS students. The position is unpaid.
I think there's too many positions. 21 seats is a huge school board. I think there's going to be a lot of, concern and fighting. There's a lot going to be disorganization.
Nate Rogers, Fox 32 Chicago.
We get it. There's a lot of information, and it can be difficult for residents and parents to sort through and make a decision. Thankfully, our friends at Block Club and Chalkbeat have put together a handy voter guide to tell you all you need to know. And for that, we're joined by Chalkbeat Bureau Chief Becky Vivi and reporter Rima Amin. Thank you both for being here. Rima, first off, all this turmoil over the last week, what has the reaction been inside CPS to these sudden resignations?
Yeah, so, at the central office level, we have sources telling us that the mood has been pretty grim. It's instilled a lot of uncertainty. One person described it to us on Friday when the resignations happened as a funeral home. So not exactly happy. I think there are people who really appreciated the board members who have, submitted their resignations. As far as schools and communities and families, what I've heard over and over again is that schools are continuing to operate as they always do. Teachers are teaching kids, principals are overseeing daily operations. But we know from talking to families and hearing from them on social media and et cetera that they have a lot of questions. And how is this turmoil, what does it mean for leadership? What is it going to mean for my school and the budget? And so I think there is a level of uncertainty that's kind of in the air.
And that dovetails right to the task at hand, and that's electing these 10 members of this hybrid 21-member board. So how are the candidates incorporating all this turmoil into their campaigns?
Well, certainly a number of candidates have come out to condemn the resignations, come out strongly against some of these moves, and in support of the current CPS CEO, Pedro Martinez. These were candidates that, prior to all of this erupting, were, not in alignment with Mayor Brandon Johnson. They launched their school board candidacies as independent or as sort of an anti-current administration approach. They're certainly taking this opportunity to make statements that strongly oppose what's happening. And then there are candidates who are aligned with Mayor Brandon Johnson. They may be endorsed by the Chicago Teachers Union, and I think they're finding it a little bit more tricky to navigate how their voters, their constituents see their stance on would you keep Pedro Martinez or not? Would you, what do you think about these resignations? And so I think you see candidates both seizing the opportunity and walking that delicate balance.
All right, as political candidates are wont to do, but a really tumultuous situation. So Rima, we know that there are big interests here that want to capture seats on the school board. A, the CTU, B, backers of charter schools. Are those sort of the big behind-the-scenes players spending big bucks here, or are there more?
Yeah, I would say that those are the two main players. Pro school choice PAC, a big one, dumped about, I think it was $500,000 into campaigns over the course of a week recently. And that's, they've said to us that is an effort to be kind of the counterbalance, counter-influence the Chicago Teachers Union. The Teachers Union has spent, less than half of that.
There's so many issues that they're going to face. They're going to have to pass a budget every year. We know that CTU has a lot of debt. It has this $500 million deficit this year. The mayor keeps saying more money from Springfield, more money from Springfield. What are the candidates saying about how to get this school system financially healthy again?
I will say generally and broadly, I'm hearing from all of these candidates. This week we've been hosting forums with them online, and I've been hearing from all of them that they really believe that we need to get the fiscal house in order. Most of the candidates do want to have a fiscally sound budget. That is one of the key roles of the school board, hiring and firing a leader, also passing a budget every year. And so I think you do have a lot of candidates who, believe in and are talking a very strong game about fiscal stability, but they also, have a lot of positions on new programs and ways to boost enrollment and attract new teachers, and all of those things cost money. So I would say really try to vet them. If anybody knocks on your door, ask those questions.
And also, let's not forget about students. And, we mentioned earlier in the show that test scores, math and reading, they do lag behind the nation. Have candidates talked about how to improve those kinds of metrics?
Yeah, I think this also kind of ranges, among candidates and districts. You hear from folks who say we need more programs. We need to invest more in our schools. Those are usually the folks who also want to see more money coming from the state as well as the federal government, and that if more programs result in more support for students, which will make things like test scores go up. We've also, you'll see in the questionnaire we ask people about things like standardized testing. What is its place in schools? And And there are some folks who actually think, yes, I believe testing has a place, but it's not the only measure of success in schools. And so you have people kind of questioning whether that is the greatest, metric of how well our students are doing. So really depends on the district and the candidate.
This weekend, kick back and catch up with Fox 32 on Fox Local. Recap the week's must-know news.
This weekend, you're going to be dealing with a lot of closures downtown.
Relive Fox 32's best.
He's not just coming at you, he's coming at you with something that he just caught.
Plus the latest political and sports buzz.
Is this a role that you like, kind of going on the attack?
There's plenty of excitement here. Watch live or anytime on demand. Weekends at Fox 32 on Fox Local. Download now on these streaming services.
Parents are no doubt confused both about the present uncertainty in the system, but what exactly they'll be voting for in these school board races. So we wanted to get an inside view on the biggest challenges facing CPS, and we're joined by another expert tonight, Dr. Joyce Kenner. Dr. Kenner served as principal of Whitney Young Magnet High School for 27 years and recently retired. Dr. Kenner, good to see you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for being here. How do you think, on the most basic level, this 21-member hybrid elected appointed school board will change CPS?
It's going to change it drastically. If you think about it, 21 persons in a meeting, all of them have something to say. It's not going to happen. And I just think it's going to be chaotic for the school system. And I just think 21 persons on any kind of board is going to be chaotic.
And 11 appointed by the mayor for the next 2 years, 10 elected. Given that, what should parents be thinking about when they go to the voting booth? Because they're going to have to make a choice, in some cases between 6 candidates, in some cases they just have one choice to make.
Well, and I would say that they need to become educated about who is running for those positions, because we need people who are invested in our education for our children. And we're getting it mixed up. This is about children, period. This should not be about politics. This is about our children and what is best for our children. So I'm hopeful that parents will get to the ballot boxes and make sure that they understand who is the candidates and why they're voting for a particular candidate.
And politics has certainly seeped into things lately. You were principal for several decades at Whitney Young, a top-performing magnet and selective enrollment school. The Chicago Teachers Union and Mayor Johnson have expressed cynicism and support for moving away from the model of selective enrollment in magnet schools. What would that do to the system?
I think selective enrollment schools have their place within this system. They are functioning, they are viable, and I put my heart and soul into creating Whitney Young for the school that it is today, and now it's run by an outstanding, exceptional educator. So if it were me, I would look at the number of students that are applying to these selective enrollment schools, and there are thousands that are applying, thousands that don't get in, but thousands who qualify. And let's look at how we select those students. Those students are selected for selective enrollment. Then we look at the next set of students, and maybe we create some additional schools for those students. I think like students need to be able to be educated in a like environment. And I just think that we as a system need to look at some different options and be creative about what we're trying to do. And again, over time, we can create some schools that are functioning and support or give more support to those schools that are not.
And CTU, their contention, and they are the folks that kind of have the seat at the table right now in the mayor's office and the school board, is that there's just such an inequity. Some schools in poor neighborhoods have no resources. Schools in richer neighborhoods have parents groups and friends of the school that will raise money. How do you close this gap?
Well, I have a wonderful solution to that. There are, and I brought my notes with me, there are 100...
Just like an educator.
Yes, absolutely. There are 120,500 millionaires in the city of Chicago. There are 24 billionaires, and there are 290 centimillionaires, meaning persons that make over $1 million. Let's just look at 600 schools that we have within our system. That is, if you divide it, that's 201 millionaires per school. You can't tell me that we can't identify 2, 3, 4 millionaires per school to support what we need to get done. Resources for our kids, books for our kids, paper for our kids. I heard of one school district that's not having any homework because they can't afford paper. We have got to look at things a little differently than we have before. There are people out there willing to support what CPS needs to be done, but we have to be creative about that. And I do believe that we have people out there to do it. One more point. At Whitney Young, we identified a development director, and she told us that if you don't ask, you don't get. And so let's ask those millionaires, those people that are financially, fiscally able to support our schools, let's ask them around a table, what do they think that we can do to support CPS?
Almost like a nonprofit institution model where the nonprofit, like the Art Institute or something, they have the development and they go out and ask for all that money. So you're saying maybe bring that model to CPS.
I would say let's look at those millionaires and identify those persons who financially can support our schools, because right now the state is saying they don't have the money to give us any additional funds.
Let me ask you, this elected school board, does it risk being taken over by special interests, including but not limited to CTU on one side, charter school backers on the other side?
Absolutely, 100%. And we don't need that. You know, I understand we have policy. I get that. But this is about educating our children. This is about all these issues surrounding our children. And it's like a quagmire. It's chaotic. 21 members on a board, it's chaotic. Nothing is going to get done, and maybe it was designed that way. I don't know, but we owe it to our children to do the best that we can to give them the financial support that they need, give them the resources that they need, and anything else to make them whole and be ready for the next step in their life, college and beyond.
Sounds like an ominous sign here, but maybe parents want to just be looking for the candidates that say they're independent of all of these interests. Dr. Kenner, thank you so much for joining us and giving us your insight.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you.
And that's all for our special Paris on Politics CPS 101. Stay up to date on all the news you need to know on the Fox 32 Chicago website and the Fox local app, and of course right here on Fox 32. Class dismissed, everybody. Our friends at Chalkbeat Chicago have a full breakdown of the dozens of candidates and their backgrounds, and we've linked to that on our website, fox32chicago.com.